In this world, there's people like me, and there's people like you. And it's up to my kind to wipe your kind out.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I'm honored to sit down today with Greg Mclean and John Jarratt, the director and star of Wolf Creek 2. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting us.
What he said.
So, Wolf Creek 2, it's been 9 years now since the first movie. So, horror movies, the trends, they tend to change all the time.
Yeah.
Did that come into account when you were sitting down to make a sequel all this time later?
Not consciously. There was no conscious decision to kind of study how horror films have changed and how audiences have changed. The main thing was basically focusing on trying to make the best Wolf Creek movie we could, which meant really taking the main elements that worked and we loved in the first film and also making a film that was really much more about the interest that I had as a filmmaker right now and that we were at this point. So the film tonally just naturally became much more of an action suspense film as opposed to an outright kind of horror film. So it kind of just naturally evolved as opposed to looking at trends and trying to react to that, because you really can't do that. I mean, I don't think it's possible to kind of judge those trends because it's so organic anyway, what's popular and what's not. So the focus was always just trying to make a great movie that didn't tarnish the reputation of the first one.
What about as an actor? Is it hard to come back to a character so many years later?
No, not so hard to come back. It was hard to get into that character the first time because he's one hell of a strange, evil psychopath, and it's a funny area to go into. And then I had the funny voice and the silly laugh, and I thought it could either be a really bad Warner Brothers cartoon impersonation or quite a good horror character. So I did all the experimenting in the first one. I knew it worked, and I guess Mick's kind of been on my shoulder ever since because it took us so long to get the next film up, and we literally worked the script for about 4 or 5 years. So he was never far away.
So, like the first one, this is based on a true story.
Correct. Well, yes.
I have to ask, how much exactly would you say is true and how much is sort of from your mind?
In terms of the first film and this film, both films are based on, they've taken different cases from true crime cases from the Australian Outback and blended them into one story. So it's not obviously it's not a documentary, but there is a real life serial killer called Ivan Milat. So and when I was writing the first script, the intention was to try and write a very a contained film that we could make for a price. And then I stumbled on the true stories, and when I realised these stories were so much more terrifying than anything I possibly imagine or come up with as a writer, it changed the whole story, because it then became really about trying to imagine what these things would really be like and what this character would really be like as a person. And then there was another case as well, which was the Joanna Lees case, where another kind of outback crazy serial killer happened, and so it kind of combined those two true stories into one thing.
Mick Taylor as a character, he has a humorous streak. How does levity sort of serve the character and serve the film?
Well, unlike his victims, he's having a very good time. He really enjoys his work, and he's having a lot of fun, and it's a game to him.
What's that for, Mick?
Ah, I forgot to mention. For each one that you get wrong, I get to grind off a finger. So, 10 questions, 10 fingers, kind of fitting, you know what I mean?
What does Mick Taylor do when he's not shooting and stabbing people? Does he have a social life at all?
Yeah, he does. He has a great life.
These guys that it's based on actually lived quite normal lives away from where they went and did their stuff. And that's really one of the fascinating, I think, terrifying things about the character and serial killers in general. It's the nature of basically the public face that someone presents to the world, and then they may have lives and families and jobs and things, and then an entirely different subconscious life where they go off and do these horrific things, then come back into that world. So that's always been something that's part of the character, and something that I'm fascinated with as well.
Every newsreel you ever see or hear is a neighbour says, he was such a nice, quiet guy, always smiling. We thought he was such a lovely man, you know. And he turns out he's torn about 17 people apart somewhere.
So the setting is a major part of the movie. It's almost a different character. How important is placing this movie in Australia to you as a director?
I spent the first part of my life as a painter, so I was a fine artist for many years. So I'm very fond of landscape just generally. So I love landscape painting and landscape photography, and I particularly love the Australian landscape. I'm just a fan of it. So the first film, when we're doing the first film, an idea crept in as we're making it that the character of Mick is kind of part of the landscape. And so we used the landscape imagery in the first film to really suggest and link the idea that maybe Mick has some kind of supernatural kind of power, presence, or force to him, or the landscape is kind of complicit in what it's doing. So it became a thematic idea that we continued in the second film. So in the second movie, we again, because we had a bigger budget and more time, and we really took that to the next level in terms of basically using the landscape as a place of isolation and as a place of terror, and also, interestingly, kind of presenting the Australian landscape in the outback as very bright and very sunny. It's the opposite of what horror movies usually do, which is take you into a dark, confined space and turn the lights off. This goes into a broad, blasting sun, open area, and that's where the horror takes place, which I think is a really interesting way to do it.
Do we have to wait 9 years to see a Wolf Creek 3?
We've certainly been talking about doing another one. I mean, look, if there's another one, the short there won't be a long wait for the next one.
Not 9 years.
No, because
I'll be an old man.
Because they'll be chasing the victims in a walking frame. And that won't be that scary. It was scary for another reason.
The Outback Retirement Home.
The Outback Retirement Home.
We hear Mick Taylor singing this. Could it be Wolf Creek the musical?
There is a musical currently touring Australia called Wolf Creek the Musical, based on the first movie. It's basically like a Monty Python version of the first movie, and the guy playing Christie is a bearded, big kind of burly guy. It's completely ridiculous, but it's very funny. So there is a musical. As silly as that sounds, I think there's a great combination between extreme depravity and horror and that kind of comedy. They just, for some reason, go very well together.
So thank you two for coming.
Thank you very much.
It's great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. He's looking up your kilt.
Does he have a social life at all?
He doesn't in his own nest, if I'm allowed to say that word.